Welcome to the Freedom Founder Podcast. I'm your host, Zach Duggar. Now it's St. Patrick's Day on the date of this recording. And as you know, it is virtually this background if you're watching this via video. Now, the problem with that is when you're wearing green, sometimes that makes the image a little bit different. Now, if you're listening to this, you won't get that visual effect of the aura of green surrounding me, but be thankful if you get that opportunity and check it out on YouTube. Now, today's guest went from the statement of being the worst trainee ever to what he's doing now and working on building a money positive community. Richard has been a futures broker for Merrill Lynch, a floor trader on the CME, CBOT, and the options floor of the Pacific Exchange. He built and sold a successful options trading firm, served on the exchange's board of directors. He also founded and built a financial software company, and he's the inventor of 10 significant trading interface patents. Now, this combined with his master's degree in clinical psychology, neurolinguistics programming master certification, and neuroscience focus, brings a unique framework to business, investing, and career success. Now, we're going to get into the conversation of building a money positive community, but first, I really want to come back around to that statement that was made about you being the worst trainee ever.
You bring up the sore points, don't you?
We got to start somewhere and build upon that. So I'd love to have our audience hear a little bit about that and kind of where you grew out of that and how that impacted you, but also how you shifted your mindset over time.
Yeah, so it started that I was a philosophy major in college, and fellow philosophy major Joe Ritchie was there, and we became fast friends. He went off to, by accident, stumbled into the financial markets and started building a trading firm and invited me to join him. So here's Rich Friesen, philosophy major, stumbling onto the floor of the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. Thousands of people, colored jackets, yelling and screaming, all the pits. And they put me, I don't know why, I have no explanation for this, in the middle of the S&P futures pit, which has about 500 guys. Never been on the floor before. Normally, you're a clerk and you work your way up. So I was trying to buy and sell and just confused. I didn't know the hand signals. And at one point I said, like 50 bid. And the whole pit turned to me and said, sold. So I knew I was off the market. So they moved me to the quieter option pit. And there my trainee after a week said, Rich, you're the worst trainee I have ever had. And
disheartening.
He was right. But I survived that withering criticism and went on to improve. And I opened a trading desk at the Pacific Exchange for the firm. And there, slowly but surely, being very careful, as I learned and grew, we did very well. So, it's like being the worst, the advantage of being the worst trainee is there's no way to go but up.
There you go. That's a good perspective on that. So as you started to move forward and move up and gain some traction in your success within that industry, they brought you in and you were able to set yourself forward. You did have at some point recognized a limiting mindset where you had a bar that you seemed to have set for yourself mentally that you couldn't exceed. Tell us a little bit about that and where was that bar at the time and how did you get to where you could overcome that?
Yeah, well, what happened was I left the firm after spending about 4 years there, and I started trading on my own. My wife didn't like living in Chicago too much, so moved back to San Francisco area. And there, the first, I was really very careful. And it was April of 1995, middle of the night, a voice woke me up. And the voice said, Rich, you're only worth $200,000 a year.
Yep.
Sat up in bed, looked around. Nobody was there. My wife was sleeping peacefully. It was a
Yep.
voice inside of me that represented a belief system that constrained my progress. So I
Yeah.
got up, showered, dressed, drove across the Golden Gate Bridge to the floor of the Pacific Exchange, where I was a market maker. And
Yep.
I'll give you, and sat on the concrete steps, the big pillars and the concrete steps. And a little background is the first year after I left the company and I went on my own, very careful, I made $125,000. Now
Okay.
that seems like a lot of money, but in the floor, the peanuts. The
Okay.
next year, very
Yeah.
careful, 150, 175, then
Yep.
200, and then 200. And what
Yep.
happened was in 1995, I was trading Micron and it just took off and there was only 3 market makers. Money was pouring in. And by the middle of February, I was up 200,000, but up
Yeah.
200, down 200, just, and I couldn't break
Right.
that barrier. And that's where the voice was. So when they opened the doors, I went to the pit, and normally I stand at the back, Rich Friesen, very carefully looking
Yep.
at the values, making little trades here and there. I decided I was done with that voice. So I
Right.
went and stood in the best spot in the pit. Now you got to understand, nobody today knows what pits are probably, but there were,
Probably from images and
yeah,
video they
hundreds
may
of
have seen.
guys standing, buying and selling, trading.
Yep.
And so I stood in the best spot, and you don't own the best spot. It's held by the guy with the most capital, the meanest, the social guy who can manage the social hierarchy.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty vicious place. So I stood in the best spot. So when the other traders and market makers and brokers all came in, the guy who always stood there kind of looked at me,
Yep.
looked at the clock, stood next to me before the bell went off, tapped me on the shoulder, says, "Okay, boy, it's time to move."
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I didn't move. I
All
was
right.
done with that voice. The
Yep.
exchange staff warned us immediately that if we get into a fight, there'd be a $10,000 fine for each. So I stood
Okay.
my ground. The bell went off, and I'm going to step back from the microphone here. And I went, "Buy them, buy 50, sell you 20, buy them, sold."
Yep.
The pit thought I had gone berserk. Well, went on to make many times my internal limit, and I started a trading firm. But what's interesting is about a third of the traders I hired just used my methodology and just took off.
Right.
About
Yep.
a third of them, they did okay, not great, but a third of them just couldn't make it. And I
Yeah.
thought, what if they had the same internal limitations?
Yep.
So very lucky, my sister Wendy, Wendy.com, always a hypnotherapist, newly minted, came in and started working with the traders. And it turned out they all had belief systems, limitations. The thought of being successful was not in their, even in their concept or vision. So as the money started coming in, they'd figure out a way to lose it.
Yeah. I just going back to what you had just said, Wendy.com. Now, who is able to capture their own name for their domain without competition? She must have got that early on.
Oh, that was me. Way
Okay.
back when I got
Yeah.
WENDI.com
Okay.
and gave it
Excellent.
to her. And that ended up being a multi-million-dollar business.
Wow, that's impressive. Saw something speculative and perhaps but saw the lights in the future to be able to
At that time it was
access it.
$35. What an investment.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. That's a great investment, I'd say. So you're on the floor. You came to stood your ground next to that gentleman, and that took off from there, where you had developed your methodology, and you were also then starting to take on traders as you established your business, and you were working with them and seeing some of that mindset where there were limitations and their perspectives on themselves. And so now, with that in mind, what did you do to help those individuals, or with knowledge of that, what are you doing today to help people with shifting that mindset and the limitations that they've established on themselves?
It's a great question. Like for example, one of the traders under hypnosis, he came
Yeah.
from dirt poor poverty in West Virginia, but he was really smart and really
Yep.
good. But under hypnosis, he realized if I'm wealthy, back there it was cousins and uncles, huge
Yeah.
families, and there was a tightly knit family system. He says, if
Yep.
I'm wealthy, that voice said, you're going to lose your family.
Okay.
So I could tell you 3 or 4 other stories too, but each of
Yeah.
them had an internal limitation and belief. So
Right.
what I've done is I've expanded what I've learned from the floor and the traders to look at a wider range of people who may have the
Yep.
same internal struggles and stresses, and to invite them to rapport with money. So I wrote the book, A Private Conversation with Money. It has
Okay.
10 exercises in it. And by the way, I'll give your listeners a free online course to go with it.
Okay.
And I'll tell you where it is in a bit. But
Yep.
so what I wanted to do was to invite people to rapport with money. And it's a real challenge because in today's culture, as you know, there's a huge split politically, culturally, economically about how the world works and how we're in it. And
Right.
so how do you, if you're a person with a really good heart, how do you manage that? So, for
Right.
example, one of the things I do with clients is I reframe money from being the root of all evil to being the wealthy are assholes, that's not fair. I
Mm-hmm.
reframe it as a certificate of appreciation.
Okay.
So,
Tell us about
Zach,
that. What does that mean for
you
me?
do something for me, you deliver some value to me.
Yeah.
I give you not money. No. I give you a certificate of appreciation. Thank you, Zach, for the value you've delivered to me.
Yeah.
Conversely, we can go the other way.
Right.
I can do you a service and you deliver to me certificates of appreciation.
Yeah.
So I want everybody
Okay.
who's listening to hold on to their heads, because what I'm going to say next, your heads are going to want to explode. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Yeah, that's it.
Let's
The
do it.
more certificates of appreciation you collect, the more value you've delivered to the world. And so that
Okay.
just totally reframes wealth and evil and money.
Right.
Now, if I take care of my kids, I take care of my grandkids, I'm taking care of my family, has nothing to do with money.
Yeah.
Martin Luther King, people who have changed the world and just brought us a better place for everyone, nothing to do with money. But if you're in the commercial world and that's where you've decided to devote your talents, what a wonderful feeling it is and rapport to collect certificates of appreciation and know that you're delivering value honestly and openly.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a mindset shift for sure. I mean, that's someone I've spoken with recently had expressed that as you acquire more in your wealth category, that it can amplify what you are. Say the good person who might
Mhm.
have that mindset as you've described, where they think it will change me if I gain more. But if they are gaining
Yes.
more certificates of appreciation, they're providing more good. And what additional good and value are they able to provide with that additional monetary gain as well? I mean, that's definitely a shift from the way that people think about it. I
Well,
like
what you're
that.
bringing up, you're opening another door, and that
Hmm.
is who do we become when we're wealthy?
Hmm.
If I look at my clients, well, let me say it this way. Not one client has ever come to me and said, Rich, I'm really concerned about being wealthy.
Sure.
They got all their problems and issues, and uh, but I say, okay. Eventually, as we get going, I say, okay, what are you going to lose with wealth?
Yep.
Oh, nothing. What do you mean? That's my dream. That's what I want. Okay, what are you going to lose with wealth? Oh, no.
Yeah.
So we go round and round for a while, and the stuff comes up. Oh my gosh, I could make a big mistake. I could
Yeah.
I could make a mistake in public. I could really hurt people big way if I do something wrong. Oh, I got to do taxes. My relatives are all going to come and try to get money from me. I'm going
Mhm.
to maybe spend it for the wrong things, or I'm going to buy things and they're going to tie me down. So there's this whole belief system around wealth. And if you have that, your survival mechanism is very clever. It'll say, no, no,
Uh-huh.
no, no, no. We're going to sabotage you so you don't have to deal with that.
Hmm. Sure. Yes. I know I've experienced that in my own mind as well. That
Mhm.
limited thinking and my ability to gain more as I continue to grow and develop in my own skill set in different areas of business and industry. So somebody who has that mindset that is working with you now, what type of strategies are you helping them to implement in their own lives to help make that transition, that shift in their ability to think about money and shifting to the certificate of appreciation thinking and not sabotaging their own actions to continue to succeed and add more value?
Yeah, depending on the person, of course, there's lots
Okay.
of paths. But
Yeah.
one thing we do that everyone can recognize is I'll have, let's say this is a trader, because that's where about half of my clients are. And
Yep.
I'll have them imagine a master trader's home, or if they're an entrepreneur, a successful entrepreneur's home. And I'll have imagine they'll describe it to me. Is it mountains by the lake? Is it in a valley? Is it in a city, an apartment building, in a high rise? Wherever it is, let's imagine what it's like. And
Hmm.
then we have them approach it and slowly step closer and closer. And then we check physiology. How's your breathing? How's your heart rate? Muscle tensions. As you get closer to it, all sorts of things come up. Do I
Yeah.
deserve it? I don't deserve to be here. So we get to the point, handles on the hand is on the door. And then I have them look around at all their community, their family, their friends, their loved ones. And I'll have them tell me who's there, what they look like. And I'll say who there objects to you stepping into your house, which is the representation of wealth.
Yeah.
And some people say, no, they're all cheering me.
Okay.
And they'll go, wow, I didn't realize that. That they think that everyone's going to be judgmental. And it
Yep.
turns out they're cheering them. Or some people will say, my dad. My dad says if I step into that house, he's going to disown me
Yeah.
because he had to struggle and to just step into wealth. It's not right. So then we go back. See, if you force somebody to step into wealth or that health or that imagination, and you haven't cleared up all the little voices and stuff, so we just go back and then we sit down with
Yeah.
dad and we have an imaginary conversation, or sometimes even a real conversation if dad's still around.
Yeah.
Turns out, almost all the time, dad, our imagination is about dad, and what dad loves us and wants from our heart is very different. He may have some cautions. Well, I'm afraid that you're going to abandon us, or you're going to become an asshole, or
Yeah.
you're going to become like them. Okay, dad, let's talk about that. So then once we can resolve that, go back, step up the house, hand on the handle of the door, look back, everybody's cheering, walk in. What's your experience? We have survival mechanisms that keep us from stepping into places that we're not familiar with. So we go through those too. And then I have some guided visualizations and hypnosis that allows us to really feel that and set it in our brains. So it's
Yeah.
okay to be there. Once it's okay, then we can start moving forward.
Yeah. I love that you take that experience, background, and knowledge in clinical psychology and neuroscience and how the brain and behavior work and apply it in this mindset shift. I mean, that really is a great application in the area that, generally speaking, wouldn't be done. Many people go through these thoughts that they just feel stuck with, and that's where they are going to continue to exist in. Some of our listeners would know this, but I have a background in applied behavior analysis and
Hmm.
psychology at a master's level too. So I really this really resonates with me and
Good.
what you're describing. So I love that, and I see the value that you're adding and what you're doing. So you have the book. You are consulting, working with individual clients, and what is Mind Muscles Academy? Tell me about that.
Yeah, that started out as primarily working with people in the financial
Okay.
markets, professionals. And the good thing about working with them is you get immediate feedback in dollars and cents.
Yeah.
You make a mistake in your career, you might not know it for several years. In
Right.
trading and investing,
Yeah.
bang, it's hard, it's fast.
Right.
But the same psychological mechanisms are happening. So I got to see, get it, it's like it's compressed. And
Yeah.
so now that I can expand it to the rest of the world. So Mind Muscles Academy is devoted to expanding, is to invite people to rapport with money, meaning, and success, which means we go
Okay.
down to your identity, your values, who you are, and invite you to rapport. We all have the judgmental voices. We all have the conflicts, especially in today's culture around, wealth and money. And there's huge judgments about it. At the same time, if we look at Hollywood, tremendous amount of wealth, and we see all these symbols of mansions and cars and everything. Oh my
Right.
gosh, what a mixed message that just if we
Yeah.
internalize it, plus all our family, educational stuff, how do we possibly move forward our full energy?
Right. Yep. Okay. I like that rapport with money, meaning, and success.
Well, yeah, yep.
M&Ms. That's what made me think of. But I think that is key. That it's not just specific to the financial industry. I think there's a lot of industries that this applies to, and people that you have that potential to help with changing in their lives and their mindset. Now, I have a question that I like to ask all of my guests. If you were to be handed $1 million today to invest in your business with no strings attached, what would you do and why?
Oh my gosh, I'd hire a marketing manager. I'm a
Okay.
philosophy major. I'm a
Yeah.
therapist. I like to
Yep.
write. I love talking to you, Zach. For me,
Yep.
this is like about as good as it gets, right?
Right. Yep.
Okay, Rich, your Twitter password changed and our distribution system no longer can connect with it. Can you fix
Oh
that?
no. Right. Right.
I mean, that
Yeah.
rabbit hole of marketing and technology and stuff. I have a virtual assistant that does really well, but my gosh,
Right.
between the two of us, we're just really overwhelmed. So if I had the money,
Sure.
I would uh, have have more of a buffer around me to
Yes.
take care of all the real things. Like in my marriage, very lucky man. My
Yeah.
wife does the taxes. She takes care of all the issues around the house so that I
Yep.
can free float in a very unreal world.
Oh, I love that. And I agree, though, that marketing area can be a rabbit hole. So I think that's a great point to bring up. That would be a great strategy for use. Well, if any end of our listeners would like to reach out and get a hold of you and get a copy of that book, where would they find you and the book? And you had mentioned a resource to accompany the book that they could access as
Sure.
well.
If they go to conversations.money
Okay.
slash freedom. So
Okay.
this is just for your listeners.
Okay.
Conversations, plural, .money slash freedom. There
Okay.
they will get a coupon for the free online course, and they'll get, there's a link to the book. It's sold almost everywhere. I just recorded the audio version that's now available. And
Okay.
so it's an Audible, it's ebook,
Yep.
paperback, hardback. But the most important thing is to, when you read the book and work through the issues with the protagonist, Joe, it's a novel format. So it's a lot more
Yeah.
fun to read than just a heavy duty psychological book,
Right.
that you can do the exercises along with him. He
Yep.
resists, he pushes back to the conversation with money. He just gives a hard time to this conversation.
Yeah.
And you can keep, that means that you can experience his resistance along with him and then feel the freedom and the rush once you step into rapport on each of the different issues.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great way to teach and to provide content is through experience within a character and a protagonist that you can actually see them working through it, but then apply it to your own life and go through those exercises to do so. There was another book I read. I don't recall if it was for certain the 1 Minute Millionaire, but I believe it may have been.
Yes.
Where it was kind of
they did a tremendous
format.
job. You know, the story on one side and then the more of the therapeutic and didactic stuff on the other.
Yeah.
I always thought when I read that book, I says, man, every book's going to be like this. This is great.
Right.
And then I didn't see any other books like it.
No,
you're right. I thought that was wonderful.
Right. Well, I'm definitely going to get a copy of your book because I'm interested in that type of an approach. That's why I brought up the other books. I think it's a nice approach as well. So I think that the concepts you're teaching, building a money positive community, changing that mindset around it, that money doesn't have to be the root of all evil in our perspective and how we look at it. Certificates of appreciation that we're given for the value that we're adding. I think that's a much
feels so good.
Actually, absolutely much more refreshing perspective on it. So, well, if our guests will want to reach out to you, conversations.money/freedom, we'll bring them to that site. Is there a connect about us, connect with us form on that page as well?
They can always email me personally.
Okay.
Rich, R-I-C-H, at mindmuscles.com. Rich at mindmuscles.com. Always happy to hear from your listeners and to see if I can provide any support.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that, Rich. And I really appreciate your time today. Thank you for sharing the stage with me and engaging in the conversation. I look forward to hearing more about what you're doing and future books that I hopefully you're working on as well.
I'm working on it. Well, Zach, Excellent. It was a delight to be here because your energy is so gentle and full and rich. It was just a delight, and I so appreciate you and having just a conversation.
Thank you again.